Hello, everyone. Anthony Knockreiner here. Welcome to the Two Deep, a brand new show focusing on high school football, specifically Class AA football here in Montana. Like I said, Anthony Knockreiner here. I cover the Flathead Braves. I do play-by-play for the Braves throughout the fall sports season as well as in the basketball. My guest, John Kemper, covers Helena High as well. John, say hello to the folks.
Hey, guys. Glad to have you on this first episode and glad to be working with you, Anthony. So you might be wondering what this is all about. And if we can go back a little bit, Anthony and I, we've talked about this on and off for a couple years. I've been kind of hesitant because I'm kind of busy and Anthony doesn't have anything to do most days. So we finally, this spring, we really started talking about it, and then this kind of started to flow and we started coming up with ideas. So what you can expect on the 2 week as we move into the season is a 2-episode or a 2 shows each week on a Saturday and on a Wednesday. On a Saturday, you're going to have a recap that's going to go through all the games that we had across the AA. We're going to talk about the stats. We're going to talk about players that had, exciting games. Anthony is going to be grabbing a coach for an interview. And we will just be talking through the games and seeing, looking at the standings and all that. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do a preview show. And the preview show, we're just going to look a week ahead at the games that will be coming up on that Friday. And again, just look at some stats and all of that and just see where we're standing with the AA as we move into, that week and then weeks after that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's really exciting. I was really happy that we were able to put this together because, like as John mentioned, we've been talking about doing this for a couple of years. I love high school sports. I love high school football. I think AA football is a great brand of football. It's very exciting every single week. Both of us have called state championship games in the last couple of years, so we've had some great runs with some great programs. And like I said, there's really no other place that's doing this kind of thing for AA football. Now, again, we wish we could do all of them, but every single Friday night, John's at a AA game and I'm at a AA game, so we really can't see anybody else, and we don't really want to talk about other classifications and other teams, and we really can't watch them play, and we really can't see what they're doing. So that's why there's such a focus on AA, is because both of us we're at a AA game every single Friday night. We're keeping up with what's going on in the Eastern Conference as well as the Western Conference. Now, again, Eastern Conference fans, you may be wondering, well, you guys cover the West, and that's all you're going to see for most of the year except for 2 weeks. Well, one of the things that we are focusing on this year is looking at the Eastern Conference, reading up on the Eastern Conference. We're going to try and watch as much film as we can as well to make sure we're knowledgeable, because like I said, the Eastern Conference does have some great football players. They've got great football teams, which we'll get into as well. But this is a show that is meant for all 16 teams and their fan bases. We're going to look at every single game, every single week. We're going to break down every game from the night before. So this isn't just going to be such a focus on, okay, hey, these are the good teams, and that's where we're going to spend our time. No, we're going to spend a lot of time on all the teams here in AA football. We're going to recognize great players, recognize great coaches to go along with that. And so one of the things we kind of want to explain as well, so why the Two Deep? Well, both John and I are play-by-play guys. And we were trying to come up with all kinds of different names, something to kind of do with the press box or what we do, because obviously we're two play-by-play guys. But one of the things that's key for both John and I is every single week we ask coaches for their starters and for the guys that are backing them up. That's what you would call the Two Deep. And so that's why it's called that. That's why we call it the Two Deep, is because simply that's kind of just a play on what we want to do. And the fact that we get that roster every single weekend just helps us broadcast better, helps us give us better knowledge and more understanding of the football teams that our teams are going to be seeing every single Friday night. And so with the Two Deep, essentially with our show, is obviously we know the Western Conference, but as I just said, we're going to take it to another level. We're going to look at the Eastern Conference. We're going to look at some more of the storylines in every single game, because nobody's doing this in Montana specifically for one classification. There's no show out there doing it. We're the ones that are going to be doing it every single weekend. We can't wait. We're really excited to bring this to the table. And like I said, this is going to be a fun show. We're going to have a lot of fun bringing this. I love talking AA football, and I know John does as well.
Yeah, and something I want to highlight with this show is, on Friday night, you have all the TV stations doing their highlights. They do a great job with that. They give you a quick hit of as many games as they possibly can. What we thought with this show is we're not going to be able to bring you game highlights as far as video, but we're going to talk to you about the games. But here's the cool thing with our show. It will be on social media platforms. It'll be on YouTube, and we're going to put the links down in our little banner running across this episode, so you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. But the nice thing is, it'll also be a podcast, so you can take it with you. We'll be on Spotify, iTunes, as well as Podbean, and it's listen at your leisure. So, on a Saturday, when the show comes out on Saturday, maybe you're with your family and you're busy, so obviously that's more important. But maybe that night you can catch the show, or Sunday you can catch the show. But you're able to catch it at your time and at your convenience, instead of having to tune in on a certain night or trying to catch a replay. So that's one thing I really like about that. And Anthony's right. One thing, we email coaches every week, and we ask in the first couple sentences after we say, "Hey, coach, great season," or "Hey, tough loss last week. Hopefully it's a win." But you say, "When you have time, can you get us your 2-deep roster?" And so when you show up, they either email it to you, or you get it at the press box if you're lucky. And then then with 2 deeps, you just hope that they actually are accurate, because sometimes they don't get changed from week to week. So you announce a starting lineup, and you didn't know that some of the offensive players may be out with injuries or whatever. So it's a lot of fun with that. But yeah, very excited for this. It's something that nobody else is doing to this degree in the AA, and we want to bring it to you because we want to highlight the players, we want to highlight the programs and the coaches in this. You're not going to get a bunch of negative talk. We're not going to talk down about programs or say one is better than the other. We're just bringing you the news and bringing you the stats and talking a little bit about each game on a weekly basis, and then just really just keeping that excitement for Montana AA football throughout the year.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that I want to let fans know, as John mentioned, social media, all those platforms as well, this will be fan interaction as well. So you can hit us up with your questions. You can email us, hit us up on the social media. We'll address those questions as much as we can on each show, whether that's getting into the previews, looking at Friday nights, or recaps when we get into Saturday morning. So again, feel free to hit us up at our social media, and John will tell us what those are here in just a second. The other thing that I want to stress here, and we do want to stress too, John, is the fact that we are not going to be picking games. I know that's usually a highlight and a deal that usually goes with these shows, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to make the case for every single team for every game, whether it be a Thursday night, whether it be a Friday night, because as play-by-play guys, we really can't pick games. For one, it's just not right to pick a game that you're calling, for one. And obviously, at the same time, too, we just don't want to, cause any strife or anything like that. So what we will do every single week in our previews is talk about making the case why we think this team will win.
There's nothing worse than picking a game and then you find the coach the next week on the team you did not pick. So, yeah.
I was about to say, players, they love holding on to that stuff. I've already known that.
Absolutely. You have some players and some teams holding on to a top 10 list you did last week, and they're using it as motivation. So I am picturing at Gallatin High School, I'm picturing your face on a dartboard or something like that. Probably not that malicious, but maybe your face on a wall, and they walk by and just give you a little love tap on the cheek to remind you that, hey, we're out here too. Maybe. I don't know.
Hey, listen, I said this the other day. I'm just like, if the kids want to use it like Michael Jordan did during the Last Dance documentary, how he took just about every single possible thing he could as a slight, hey, if it makes you play better, then at the end of the day, I'm good with it.
I leave it to you to make a Michael Jordan reference to make yourself feel that important. So, yeah. It's more like Will Ferrell in the basketball movie, whatever that one was.
I was about to say, I thought you were going to go with Anchorman for just a second there.
No, yeah.
Both age.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. That's the show. As far as getting a hold of us on social media, again, just follow the banner at the bottom. It's going to have the handles for Instagram and for Twitter, and then also the Facebook page and YouTube. But pretty simple on Twitter. It's at the Two Deep and the number 2, not TWO. So the Two Deep MT, and you can follow us there. But Anthony and I are going to be blitzing social media on our sites to get this going. I do want to talk about logos, because we do have a logo that's being made, but we don't have it quite yet. So you might not see a great logo for a few days, but hopefully by next week we have a logo up, and we've been working with a guy that's pretty famous for logos in Montana, and so we hopefully will have that here in the next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Like I said, this is going to be a really cool operation. Looking forward to bringing it. So here's the deal where, you're kind of looking at some of the things. As I mentioned, we're going to make your case. We're going to look at a lot of cool things, headlines, news, all those types of things for Class AA football, and just kind of focus on those types of things to go along with it. The other thing I want to mention too as well, because just to kind of give us a little bit more background here, obviously I've only been here. I'll be going into my 5th season in Class AA football, being the play-by-play guy for Flathead. So I've learned quite a bit since my days being in Florida and calling games down there. And I think Montana football is a great brand of football. I've said this before. I would really love to see some of our best teams get a crack at, teams that are out of state, take on some teams from Washington, take on some teams from Idaho. I'd love to see those types of matchups. But just give us a background. I've been doing this for 5 years now. I've done it for about 8 years since college, whether it's play-by-play or just covering high school football, high school sports in some sort of capacity. John, for you, man, how long have you been doing this?
So in Montana, I've been doing it since 2013. I started then. I did color the first year and then moved to play-by-play, thank God, because you don't want me doing color. So I've been doing it. This will be my 8th season for Helena High. It'll actually be my 11th season overall. When I lived in Texas, I covered Texas high school football in Houston. So kind of got baptized that way, and got used to watching prep football. So came up here, was able to make that transition. But I mean, like you said, Montana has some great football at all levels, and at AA, it's a lot of fun. So yep, that's how long I've been at it. I wanted to ask you a question. So you were doing Florida. Any interviews or any players that you watched in high school that are at the NFL level, or maybe a college level?
Dalvin Cook for the Vikings. I did color for a playoff game because they played at Miami Central, which was taking on a team that was in the area of Palm Bay for a playoff game. So Dalvin Cook was one, and he wasn't as big as he is now, but he was just a huge football player even in high school. And then a couple other ones, Jamel Dean, the cornerback for the Bucks.
Convenient on that one.
I was right. There's a couple other Cocoa players that I've covered.
Like Cocoa Puffs or just Cocoa?
Cocoa Tigers. There's a city in where I'm from that's called Cocoa.
How did they miss out on Cocoa Puffs as their logo or as their team name?
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't even know, because I think Cocoa is a very old high school. I mean, I don't even know if the cereal was out at that time. But there's a couple of guys from the NFL that are in there. A couple corners that play. Juwan Taylor's a lineman for the Jaguars. Gardner for a cornerback for the Saints. So I've seen a couple of really cool dudes that have made it to the NFL, which is really phenomenal. Like I said, it's always cool when you kind of see those guys that are playing in high school, and then a couple of years later, all of a sudden you're seeing them get drafted, or they're playing in the NFL on Sundays, which was always a big dream of mine. But I topped out at 5'8", and I knew that dream wasn't going anywhere.
True. I think for me, the player that I covered the most in Houston was Andrew Luck. I got to call a few of his games, interviewed him, I think just once, talked to him a couple times. Real nice guy. It shows how much I paid attention to high school and college football, though, after I kind of was in a transition period where he graduated and I just wasn't paying attention. And I turned on, Sunday or Saturday afternoon football, and Stanford was on, and they mentioned Andrew Luck. And I was like, he's at Stanford. Holy cow. Okay. And then, obviously a first round pick and all of that. But so I covered him a little bit, and then I covered Jacquizz Rodgers and his brother. I think they both played for Atlanta. and
Yeah.
they played south of Houston. I think Richmond is where they played, but yeah. And I know there were other ones in there. I missed Andy Dalton by about a year, and all of that out in Katy.
Just
But
pretty good.
yeah, he's decent. I mean, I guess did he ever win a playoff game? I don't know.
No, I think Cincinnati 0 for 5.
Yeah. I mean, they're almost as bad as the Bucks. But anyway, there we go. The first eye roll. That was what I was going for. Well, I'm sure people will get to know us more as we go along, week in and week out here, Anthony. But I think we should jump into this episode because some news came down last week from the MHSA, and it was a couple things: guidelines and requirements for football play because of COVID-19, and we're going to go through that. And then also they have a 5-tier system for fall activities, and we're going to go through that as well. So I thought we'd start first with, I think we should start first with the 5-tier system and kind of what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. So I'll do tier 1, and then you can do tier 2, and we'll just move through. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me, man.
Okay. So tier 1, MHSA came out with this 5-tier system, and it basically goes, tier 1 is games played as scheduled, no multi-events, so you can't have triangulars and things like that, but masks are required, but the season starts as scheduled. And that's obviously the best case scenario that we can have given the environment that we're in right now.
And right now we're pretty much at tier 1 at this point. So that'll be the interesting thing and hopefully we can stay there. Tier 2, delayed start or interruption, non-conference games canceled, classification by sport input. Again, no multi-team events, triangulars, invitational tournaments, all that. Masks per governor's directive as well. Possible playoff postseason formats, possible separation of sites. That obviously comes into play in tier 2. And then John will tell you about tier 3.
Yeah, so tier 3, delayed start, an interruption that lasts a longer period of time. So non-conference games, of course, canceled because of tier 2. It would move to a conference season, but that conference season would also be shorted. And we should just say masks are required all the way through in this. We don't need to keep saying it, of course, but the season would be compacted. So I guess the easiest way to think about it is, in an extreme case, think of Major League Baseball right now going from 162 games down to 60. So you would see, maybe just 5 games of the conference play, and then hopefully some playoffs. So that's tier 3.
Yeah, tier 4, start however mid-season interruption, conference season shortened, seating by conference, postseason tournament adjusted, dates, formats, possible sites depending on location of virus breakouts, same dates if possible, obviously. And, like I said, tier 4, that starts to get really into some pretty dangerous territory for us. And not only just because of the sports situation, but obviously if we're hitting tier 4, that's not good in terms of the coronavirus numbers either.
Yeah, the health concerns around the state would be obviously very high if we're sitting in tier 4. Right. And then you move to tier 5. Tier 5 basically turns into almost like an exhibition for the season. You have a few games, some games they say, and a round robin play. So you could kind of think about frontier football if they go with the fall season, how they're going to play each other kind of multiple times. You could see something similar with Montana AA. And this goes for A, B, and C as well in football. And it goes for volleyball. It goes for cross country and all those sports as well. So we're focusing on football, but that's what tier 5 would look like. And if we're in that, I mean, I think we have a lot of other things that we're dealing with, around. So during all the tiers, schools must follow the governor's phase directives, state and local health department directives also regarding fan attendance. And we're going to talk more about that as we move along in the show. And then of course, travel requirements. And that's something I think if you don't stop and think about everything that goes into a football game, there's a lot. And we're going to talk about as much of that as possible today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, John, when I look at these tiers, I like the fact that we do have them. So good on the MHSA for having them out there because, like I said, it's going to give us kind of an idea where we are sitting. But like I said, right now, we're at tier 1. Hopefully we stay at tier 1. I haven't seen the latest numbers to know whether or not they're going down. It seems like Missoula's numbers are going down. It does seem like I think Bozeman's might have as well. But either way, hopefully we can just stay at tier one. But like I said, the good thing I do like about this is that, obviously I think the conference games are really important for us. And so if we do lose the 2 non-conference games, it's not the end of the world. And if we needed to, we at least have till mid-September to try and really contain this thing to be able to have a season. Because I think if nothing else, we need to get the conference games in.
Yeah, we have. That's the most important, having conference games. We only have a 9-game schedule this year also. So it's, I think in the next year, I think next year we go back to 10, but part of that's because Gallatin's just coming in and Belgrade had just come in on that. But I do want to say this because for Anthony and I, if you're, it's one of these glass half empty, glass full type of things. Anthony and I in this, we've been this way since this all started. We are glass half full. And until MHSA canceled spring sports and sent this out and did that, we were working under the assumption that we were going to have sports. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know some people don't operate that way. That's fine if that's how you operate. But I want people to understand the premise of where we come from. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about best case scenarios. And I know everybody wants to have games and everybody wants to play. But Anthony and I come from the standpoint, like, we're going to have games. Until they say no, we're having games.
Yeah, and that's not to sell short what's going on. We understand it completely. We're not, heartless monsters or anything like that. We don't want anybody to get sick. We don't want anybody to be affected by this disease, clearly. But again, as John said, we're just glass half full people. We're optimistic. There have been some good signs in terms of, region baseball has been doing pretty well so far. So again, hopefully we can kind of keep that momentum going. But at the same time, and as John pointed out, if the MHSA says, hey, okay, that's it, then that's it. And we totally understand that. So like I said, we want to make sure that people understand what we are advocates for the players, for the coaches, for the programs that put in such a large amount of time during the summer and just trying to have a season. And for so many kids, especially the seniors, they just didn't get that spring, obviously, and to lose the fall as well. It would just be really, really, I think, devastating for the kids. And I don't want anybody else to have to go through that with what our seniors had to do last year.
Yeah, I agree. And, we could, obviously we need to move on here for sure. But I mean, we could go deep on, the psychology of not having games and the psychology of how important playing sports is for not just players, but coaches and the schools and everything. But that's a conversation for Dr. Phil. Is he still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oprah, probably.
Oprah, Judge Judy. No, that's something. So you've been on Judge Judy. That's what I've heard. Okay, second eye roll.
Funny guy.
I got to go for 5 eye rolls a show. So I got 2. I got 3 more to go. All right, let's move into requirements. So MHSA set out a bunch of requirements. A lot of they all make sense. And we're just going to touch on a few, actually several. We're not going to read this word for word, but basically, workouts and practices need to be conducted in pods or bubbles. That kind of happens now with football anyway, where you go special teams, offense, defense, then you break it down into running backs and receivers and quarterbacks and offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, corners, and all of that. So they kind of have that already. And then before, during, and after the contest, players and coaches and administration obviously wash their hands and sanitize as often as possible.
Yeah, one of the other ones that really kind of stands out to me, everyone must have their own beverage container that is not shared. Safe handling practices should be adhered during hydration, which includes refilling, retrieval, and identification of water source. Obviously, timeouts is going to be something else that we can see timeouts extended just for that social distancing. One of the other things, that everything's going to be, and this is going to be really interesting too, cleaning of the footballs. And that's going to have to be something that's constantly done. And I feel like and this is something we can dive into, I'm curious, does that mean every football, so like when we have one play finish, a new football has to come in, and that one has to get cleaned? I'm operating under that assumption.
Well, if you read through, as you read through some of these, I just made the assumption you didn't read through. I know you read through it, but they actually said clean the ball as often as possible according to manufacturer's guidelines. So they probably won't clean it between every snap, especially nowadays. I mean, you have an offense moving pretty quick. They could, I guess, throw a ball in and out after every play. They could definitely do that. But I have a feeling it'll go a few plays and then they'll swap it out. I got to tell you, though, you talked about water bottles. The other thing is towels. Like, you can't share towels. So a player's going to have their own towel. So if you ever doubted the role of student managers on the sidelines for football teams or any team, man, never doubt them, because they are going to be responsible to make sure these water bottles are labeled with the name. They have to have the water source, so if there's an issue, they can track that. They're going to have to figure out how to put towels in certain spots for certain players. So, I mean, they have a lot that they have to deal with. And like you mentioned too, the timeouts will be extended to the maximum 2 minutes instead of just normally the 1 minute. It seems to be what people take. And then in between the first and second quarter and third and fourth quarter, you'll get a full 2 minute break, which honestly for you and me, Anthony, I love it. That gives us like 2 minutes to kind of reset, get a few things set up on play-by-play before we dive back into the quarter. I'm sorry, what?
Send out a few tweets.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. Yep. Send out some tweets. Send out some updates. So.
And check updates too, because, I mean, we both do that. We both check score updates all the time, figure out what's going on with other games as well. One other thing that's going to be interesting too is obviously administrators must limit the number of non-essential personnel who are on the field, players' surface area throughout the contest. So that's also going to be something that's interesting, because that hasn't really been announced essentially where that stands. And I imagine it's going to be up to local schools, because obviously we all know you got to have a scorekeeper, got to have a time clock guy.
Yep.
PA, us, because
yep.
essentially we're going to be at games and stuff like that. So it's really going to be interesting to see what administrators decide to do.
Yeah. Another thing on that, cloth facial coverings are allowed for players, coaches, and officials. However, they have to be single color, a single solid color, and they have to be unadorned. So, I've seen a lot of scarves or face coverings that have a logo of a team on them, and that would look really great on the field or on the sideline, but they're not going to be allowed to have that. The other thing they're not allowed to have is a face mask, a clear face mask that goes all the way down into the helmet. It can, if it's attached right, underneath, but in most cases, you're not going to be allowed to have a face mask that extends all the way down. And I don't know if people really wanted that, but I know that's something that's been talked about in the NFL and
I was going to say some colleges already have something like that, because they've made some adjustments for those.
Yeah, and they are allowing, I should clarify, they are allowing them, but they have to be secured right. They have to be, right, put in right. They have to be clear. They can't be tinted and all that. So if people thought maybe they could take a disposable mask and somehow zip tie it into the face mask, you can't do that. So it has to be a legit piece of equipment.
Yeah. And then some of the other things I took notice of as well, just kind of moving to some down to the pregame, postgame. Obviously, one thing that's going to change is we're not going to see the old line up and shake hands type of deal. I kind of feel like maybe just line up everybody on the sideline and just start waving.
Yeah, true. Yep, you're going to have one team captain that will go out to the middle of the 50-yard line for the coin toss on each side, but no handshakes before the game, after the game. Yep.
Yeah. And then, so like I said, it'll be – and the other thing that's going to be interesting too is locker rooms in that type of scenario, because obviously the home locker room can be cleaned and sanitized and all that stuff. But I'm curious, what are they going to do about visiting locker rooms? That's something that's going to be interesting.
Well, they'll still be able to sanitize them and do all that. I mean,
well, one of the things I've wondered is like, do you grab because obviously I know players have a shower and everything else, but do you grab like a tent and put them out there to change in that tent first, and then allow them sanitize, clean everything, so that way they can just use the shower, get in, use the shower, get out, to try and kind of mitigate all the contact?
Do you, and forgive me, it's not that I guess I don't pay attention a lot, but I don't see a lot of visiting teams taking showers before they leave. Do they?
I mean, I just assume because I think that, considering the travel, that's one smelly bus.
Yeah, it's kind of a badge of honor. I mean, that's something I guess as I've watched, I don't really see players taking showers. Maybe some do, but I mean, I think what could happen is they just say, hey, no showers, you get on your bus and you go. But and we're going to get to buses, but that brings up a whole nother thing is transportation. But one thing they're going to do also is they're going to extend the team box on the sidelines. It usually is at the 20s. They're going to extend it to the 10, but that's only for players, not for coaches. So the coaches will have to abide by the 20 to 20, but players will be able to spread out to the 10s.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's pretty smart. You got to use the entire sideline, obviously. And there's a lot of kids on AA, but I think at the same time, and I didn't see it in here, but I wonder if if administrators are gonna tell coaches, hey, you got to have a roster, only so many kids, whether it be, going on the road or just being at home, like, hey, we can't have all these kids dressed out. Like, you got to have a number.
Yeah, I mean, that could very well be because obviously the sideline, you can only hold so many people at 6 feet, 6 foot intervals. You're going to run out of space pretty quick. So I would expect sidelines to be a little more sparse than in years past.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. A couple things. Let's talk about transportation. And then I think something that everybody is probably waiting for is talking about how fans are going to be able to attend these games. And we don't have any definitive answers, but we're going to give you a few ideas that seem logical. So at least how things are going. So transportation, how are they going to do that? Obviously, they have to practice social distancing. Does it mean they take extra buses? Does it mean they don't bring JV? Does it mean what Anthony said, and there's just a roster of a certain amount, and that's all they can take? I mean, those are questions that MHSA, if they haven't answered yet, they're going to have to, and each team and athletic department's going to have to answer as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is going to come down more to the athletic departments. And I got to imagine either it's this week or early next week, the ADs are meeting at the different classification levels and kind of deciding what their classification is going to do in certain sports. Because, as we talk about football, obviously, we are a football specific show, but this is a similar deal for volleyball as well. But I got to imagine the ADs are meeting either this week or early next week to try and figure out those protocols and how they're going to do buses. Because, I mean, that is a very interesting part of this is like, I know, when Helena comes to Flathead, they play the JV game before they play the varsity game. Do you do that? Do you move it to where, okay, JV games are played on Saturday and the varsity games are only played on Friday night? I could potentially see that to limit the social distancing and to limit the numbers because, again, if you've only got, you essentially, if you wanted to, because football gets 2 buses as is because of JV has to go in the varsity, you could essentially say offense on one bus, defense on the other bus, and do that that way you can kind of create that more of a social distance, and that way also too it's just not as cramped. But again, I don't know if that's going to be something that the ADs or the coaches to decide to do, but that's another area there where, again, that would be at least an idea that I would consider. I don't know. I think for JVs, you may have to maybe play some of the AA's a second time, perhaps. Like I know for us, Missoula's a short trip, because again, that's going to be the whole key to this as well is, distance. You're really going to, I'm sure, obviously in Montana, it's hard to avoid, but these ADs, these coaches are going to want to try and shorten the distance if possible.
Yeah, and just sitting here thinking about it, you might see JVs actually not travel at all, and the JVs are playing just a modified schedule of teams within a shorter distance. I think that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
So you could see Helena, let's say Helena and Capital playing, CMR and Great Falls and Belgrade, more of those East teams, Butte, and you guys up in Flathead and Glacier playing the Missoula schools and then over to Great Falls. And so, I mean, they're going to get creative. The good thing is there's people a lot smarter than us that are going to sit down and figure out all this. So.
Yeah, I was going to say they're going to work on the logistics because, I mean, and here's the other thing too is, I mean, obviously on the JV level, Crosstown has a little bit more uniqueness to it. So I'm sure the JV game for Crosstown, much like over here, is very important and, a big deal as well. But maybe you do it 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe you do it 2 or 3 times because essentially what you're looking for at the JV level is game reps. That's what you're looking for those younger players to get reps and for them to get some film and for them to kind of be evaluated. And, if you need to modify the schedule, maybe you got to play each other 2 or 3 times. I don't think that's as a bad idea. Obviously, you can't do that with the varsity. But I think JV-wise, to shorten the distance, that might be something that has to be considered.
Well, I mean, depending on what tier, if we move out of tier 1 and get into tier 4 and 5, you could very well see that. I mean, from varsity as well. So let's move on to attendance, because attendance is, man, I mean, I know you and I have talked this summer. I've talked to Stuart Davis, who does Capital. Chris Stratton, talked to him just briefly about it at a Legion game. But man, it could be a thing where there's no fans, and it falls on us as play-by-play guys, play-by-play people, to be able to bring the games to fans. And also they're going to be able to use the video through NFHS as well. So that could be something that happens. But media is going to play a bigger role than they have in years past, really, to bring Montana AA high school football this year.
It very much will. And I think, when we talk about fans, I kind of talk about this on my show, and I know you and I have had conversations about this. I kind of differ on this. I just think to start, I just don't think we're going to see fans. I think we have to see numbers across Montana continue to fall. And I don't really have a problem with that to at least start. If you want to make a modification and say, okay, seniors only, they get 2 fans to come in and they've got to socially distance, I'm good with that as well. But again, in terms of what we're used to seeing, a lot of fans at stadiums or even a half capacity stadium, I just don't know if we're going to see that in high school games. But I could see where it's either we just start with no fans, maybe that first 2 weeks, see how things go, or we just say, okay, hey, seniors, you're allowed 2 tickets or 2 fans to come to the game. Here's another curious part of this too, that are home teams going to allow road fans?
That's a great question.
If you allow fans, do you allow road?
Well, I'm optimistic, so I think there will be fans week 1.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, I mean, just look what we have around the state with Legion baseball. You have fans in stands watching Legion baseball. So I think that sets a good precedent that we will have fans. We will not have capacity at any of these stadiums, obviously, but I could see, 25%, even 50% if they can socially distance and do that, which they can. As far as bringing in, allowing the traveling fans and parents to come, yeah, I mean, I think you got to at least let the senior parents be there. I mean, this is their last go around. And honestly, there's plenty. Honestly, if there's one place you can social distance in any stadium across the Montana AA, it's in the visitors section of all those stadiums. And they travel well. I mean, Helena travels well, Capital travels well, Billings schools travel well, Butte definitely travels well. They all travel well, but the reality is you might only have 100 people show up for a game. The trick is this: it's going to fall into the realm of the health departments, the county health departments, to kind of tell teams what is going to be okay. And right now in Lewis and Clark County, they're not allowing events over 250 people. They shut down the farmers market for having 250 people, over 250 people. And so you might have something where they say, hey, only 250 people can be here. And then it turns into, well, I guess senior parents first and work your way down. Does that include players? If it includes players, well, you can have about 50 fans in the stands,
Yeah.
Does it include radio? Does it include the press box? Does it include, all of the things that go in with a football game?
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what they do. Because, like I said, I mean, and here's the other thing that we haven't really thought about, because it's not going to be a universal deal. Like, the rules, obviously, as we know, the rules are different in Missoula than they are here. They're different where you are than where they are here in Flathead. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how the rules get made up, because I feel like that's going to be determined by the home teams.
Yep, exactly. It's going to be determined by the home teams, and they're going to, I believe, follow the direction of the county health department,
Right.
or whatever county they're in. So you could have some wild numbers. I mean, honestly, you could have 250 here in Helena, and you go to another city and they pack out 2,000. You just don't know. I mean, probably not that crazy, but you just don't really know. So that's where we sit on attendance. And
one thing, John, because it was making me think about attendance as you were kind of talking about it. If we had a roster limit, let's just say what number would you pick, for AA coaches to say, okay, hey, this is how many kids you can take out on the road, or how many kids you can dress out? What would be the number, do you think?
Oh boy, honestly, that's a better question for a coach. Correct me if I'm wrong. When a team travels, or when a team brings, is it about 75, 80 kids on the sideline?
If a team,
depending on the program?
Bigger. Yeah, I'm around there. I'd say around there.
I
guess 65.
65
would be the number I would guess.
So I think what they would do, I mean, we're not good at math because we do radio, but if you took the sidelines from the 10 to the 10, and then you maybe said the sideline is 10 yards deep, and then you went every 6 feet and figured that out, that's going to tell you, that'd probably give you a good idea about how many players would be allowed. So I'm not doing the math on it, but my first thought was 50.
Okay.
That was my first thought.
So yeah, 50,
22 starters.
We don't know if there's even going to be a limit.
Yeah. We're just speculating on all of this. Here's a speculation for you. What happens if a player on a team or a member of a team's staff tests positive for COVID?
That we don't know. That is going to be something that's going to have to, once again, be decided by the local high school administrators in partnership with their county health departments as well.
And I agree with that. I think you have to take it a step further, because let's say there's a game on Friday, and on Monday morning you find out 2 players on whatever team test positive for COVID. That affects the team they just played 48 hours before, 72 hours before.
Yeah.
So how do they determine that? I mean, that's stuff I know that they're going to sit down and talk next week and come up with. I mean, if you go like with MLB, they just stop play for those teams for 14 days. Right. So do you lose 2 weeks of games?
Well, here's the curiosity, and that's why I wonder, if there's going to be a scheduling change to kind of roll into those contingencies. Because I wonder, do you say, okay, you know what, we're going to scrap the non-conference, we're going to go straight into conference, but we're going to put in the 2 weeks that we had initially for non-conference games. We're going to say, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to give 2 weeks of birth within the season. So just in case that does happen, okay, you can say, hey, we can, try and work this out, postpone it, because essentially, now again, that's a logistical nightmare, I'm sure, trying to match that up and everything else. But maybe that's something they look at and just say, hey, we're going to give 2 weeks towards the end of the season. We're going to move up the conference games, put 2 weeks at the end of the year, just in case something happens and maybe we got to make up a game.
Yep. And that makes sense. I'm glad I'm not making the decisions, because the reality is this: whatever decision you make, there's going to be people happy and people mad. And that's just the way it's going to be. But I think Anthony and I are both hopeful that we're going to have games. We're sitting in Tier 1 right now. Hopefully we stay there. Worst case for us is, in our minds, the worst case is we lose non-conference games, but we get conference games. obviously the catastrophic is a tier 5, and we're just playing round robin and just having games for a few weeks maybe.
Playing a lot of cross-town games.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we sit, Anthony. I mean, that's pretty much the MHSA guidelines, and that does cover all the sports. It's not just football, but obviously we're focusing on football on it. There's other ones in there. Those were the ones that we felt were the most important. A lot of them, if you go, if you just think through it, they make a lot of sense. So that's where they sit with the guidelines, and then with the tiers.
Yeah, like I said, that's where things sit at the moment. I know the guidelines and tiers or all that. All those documents are up on the MHSA website. We'll try and post stuff that regards to those things because, like I said, I imagine that the MHSA was good to get the announcement early last week, but I anticipate throughout the rest of this week, or at the very least early next week, we're going to be hearing from more local school districts in regards to how things are going to work with for athletics.
Yep. And I mean, as of this week, we're basically 3 weeks out from the start of the football season.
3 weeks from Friday night. This Friday night, we got our first games of the year.
All right, so we're going to wrap up, but we're going to tell you a little bit about what you can expect here for the next few weeks as we do ramp up for hopefully the start of the season. Next week, we're going to bring you some previews of teams. We will bring you previews of the the Eastern Division and the Western Division over the next couple weeks. We'll keep you obviously up to date with the MHSA and their guidelines and decisions they make if they're able to come out with those decisions next week before we put this out. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about those on that. And then, of course, I think we're going to highlight some players that we are seeing as players that can have some impact on this season. We will do our best to, we'll let Anthony pick those players so he can make people mad, and I can pick on him. So,
I've got my top 5 running backs, wide receivers. Those will be coming out later this week. We can discuss those.
Also, of course, coaches as well.
Yes, coaches as well. We're also going to try and get some local friends of ours, local media members as well to hop on with us, because that's one of the great things about Zoom is, and all the other things that we're going to be on, that we can get other people involved here. And that's what we're going to try and aim to do is get some of our other local media colleagues and get their thoughts on this thing as well.
Yep, absolutely. So if you have a question or a comment for the Too Deep, go ahead and follow the links at the bottom that have been scrolling across your screen this entire time. You can leave a message for us on Twitter, on Instagram. Go ahead and like our Facebook page and put a comment on there as well. And then our email is the2deepmt@gmail.com, and that's on there as well. So you can send an email as well. Yeah, Anthony, I think we did okay for the first one. We'll find out.
I was about to say, just getting the first show in, that's fantastic. Like I said, we're really excited because, that was the crazy part about this, John, is, you and I were having discussions about this show, but we didn't know if we could even have the show or even start. So the fact we were able to, like I said, again, this is a show tailored to the fans. We want to talk about the things that you guys kind of want to hear about and what you're curious about. So like I said, as John pointed out, so many ways to get a hold of us. Obviously, you can follow us as well at the Knock On Sports, for John at JT Kemper as well. Plenty of stuff to follow him with in regards to his lousy team that is the Dodgers, but also does a great job with the Helena High Bengals. And so, like I said, just fun for all of us.
I don't know why I deserve such abuse, but
you deserve abuse.
True, 32 years. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to throw out a question for our listeners to go on to social media and answer this for us. Very simply, what team or teams, top 3 teams, do you think are the most likely to get to a state championship or win a state championship this year? So either your top 1, you say it's going to be whoever, or you say, I think these 3 teams are going to compete for that state championship this year.
Yeah, give us your top 3 contenders. I love that. I can't wait to see what people come up with.
I know you love it because I came up with it.
Well, sometimes you do have a little bit of a golden nugget with questions or ideas. Sometimes you do. I got to give you a ton of credit for that.
Well, I'm sure people would love to listen to us banter, but I can't take any more of that Buccaneers jersey behind you. I'm gonna have to go scrub my eyes from that. maybe put on my Packer hat to soothe.
Just wait till I get the Brady jersey.
Oh yeah, that's great. I'm glad. Hey everybody, just so you know, Anthony Knockreiner, proud Tom Brady jersey since 2020.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, Anthony, hey, it's been a fun one, and
Absolutely.
we'll get we'll get up and get this going next week. Hopefully, we'll have a logo next week, and we'll bring you previews of Montana AA football and a lot of other goodies. So,
absolutely. Make sure you give us a like on the show. Like I said, give us a comment. Share it with your friends as well. Like I said, this is going to be a lot of fun. John, I really appreciate you doing this with me. Like I said, I can't wait. Again, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to have a full season, and we're going to have a whole lot of shows for us to talk about. We're going to have a lot of games to talk about. So really excited to get this thing underway. This is going to be a lot of fun. And the best part about this is every show is going to be a little bit better than the last.
Yep. Well, for Anthony Knockreiner, I'm John Kemper, and this has been the Too Deep. The Too Deep. I'll cut that. Just freeze. Okay, well, that's going to do it for Anthony Knockreiner. I'm John Kemper, and this has been the Too Deep.